попало, вот она уже заживает, правда, но тут кости нету у меня. Надо еще делать операцию, кость надо вставлять.
During a week-long investigation on the ground in eastern Ukraine, Human Rights Watch has found widespread use of cluster munitions. Our evidence shows that the Ukrainian armed forces were responsible for at least some of these attacks. In the incidents documented by Human Rights Watch, cluster munitions killed at least 6 civilians and injured dozens.
В это время упала эта бомба вот тут вот. Если хотите, могу эту яму показать. И взорвалась, и прямо в окно. В окно, как его, она стояла возле окна. И разбила окно, этот осколок, и вот так вот сонная артерия перерезала. Я пришел, а я оттуда иду, тут люди. Ага. Я пошел, хотел туда идти, а там, смотрю, люди кричат: дядя Ваня, тетю Раю убила.
The cluster munitions that Human Rights Watch has documented in eastern Ukraine are surface-to-surface weapons. They're rockets. And within those rockets, there are dozens of submunitions or smaller bombs which explode when they hit the ground. The problem with cluster munitions is that they cover a wide area. And anybody who is in that area, whether they're civilians or combatants, run the risk of being injured and killed. And that is why it is an inherently indiscriminate weapon.
Упал вот это, почувствовал, что заложило уши, и увидел, как со спины вот это закрывает пылью, землею, как волна как накрывала. Да, пробито одно легкое, сейчас потихоньку восстанавливается, но еще не до конца.
The first clue that cluster munitions have been used is usually the presence of multiple impact craters with a very distinctive fragment pattern.
After the detonation of the submunition, fragments are ejected and these melt into the asphalt as they come out.
At these impact sites, we also find very often remnants of the submunitions or of the rockets themselves. And witnesses also told us what it sounded like when the attack happened, that it was multiple smaller explosions, which is typical of a cluster munitions attack.
Okay, and that's all about cluster munitions attack that's happened over in the Ukraine. Something you don't hear about too often, something that people are saying that the Ukraine army used. And if you recall that you hear a lot from the U.S. media, from the government, from the Ukrainian puppet government, which is a puppet of the United States. If you've watched this report, you know that Newland had the intercepted calls where the United States essentially placed the neo-Nazi puppet government into place in the Ukraine. Now, they're firing these cluster munitions. And another thing, too, I wanted to point out is, who was it yesterday? I think it was the Swiss government. I can't recall exactly. And they came out and said that they found evidence that the Ukraine army shot down the MH17 plane and not the Russian-backed rebels that they've been fighting, the separatists, I guess you would call them. Back to this cluster, though. You have firing cluster munitions into populated areas. And it's basically, it's very irresponsible. Why would they do this? Who would order such attacks like this? And like I said, the Ukraine army that is responsible for this is backed by the United States. They're backed by NATO. And they're firing them on rebel factions, but as you can see, innocent civilians are being killed from it, are being hurt from it. This one guy with his lungs. And they went out, Human Rights did, they showed clear evidence of a cluster bomb attack. And it's something we should be concerned about. So, this is the Uncensored Report. This is your host, Frankie Abbruzzino. It's a daily show, Monday through Friday, 11 to 12. I just actually got back from filming or recording my Saturday segment, which talks about local government issues, and there's such a difference in the program. Like this is my program. I do it. I've been doing it for free for about a year now. I do my media outlets for about 5 years. To me, I can run however I want. If I want to sit here and dance and sing, I can do that. If I want to play a video the whole show, I can do that. I don't feel any burden or stress to do it a certain way. And it's weird. When I was telling my wife, when I go into the record the studio on Saturday, it's a different scenario because I have to cover news, local news. It's sometimes stories that I read once, and generally what'll happen is I'll type up something on a Saturday and Sunday on issues to talk about, and then I'll go in and record on Wednesday, and I don't look at those notes until I go in and record on Wednesday. So it makes it a lot more tougher, whereas when you're talking about issues daily, you can sit there, you know it. The daily stuff, the national, international, I'm pretty much up on. I don't even really need the research documents, although I use them because I want to make sure that it's pretty factual what I'm putting out there. Also, with the other show, a lot of times it seems too scripted to me. Like, this is not scripted, folks. That other one, it's like, okay, you got 4 segments, choose a topic to go over for each segment and run from there, which kind of drives me crazy. There's no video, so you're just over air, which is different too. Like on this, a lot of you guys will be listening at work. Some of you may be listening and watching. I personally, when I watch these shows, I watch Alex Jones. I watch him every day for 3 hours. Now, I'm working while I'm doing that. Sometimes I'll put it up on a spare computer because I have about 3 computers around me. So I'll put it up there, and I'll glance over and I'll watch the video. Sometimes if I'm just on one computer, I'll listen to it. If it's a part where I want to see something, because a lot of times he'll play videos, then I'll just hit Alt-Tab and I'll flip over to it. And so I'm a fan of the video, which is why I do mine this way. I'm also a fan of doing it live, which drives me crazy that I can't right now with this software. But this is essentially live because what I put out there is it. I don't go through and edit this at all. All right, but to the show. This is a one-man operation. And I've been, I do the hosting, the research, the website. Everything is up in my hands. I do a lot of the social media, and this one's international, national. I try not to read the threads because then you get too caught up in a lot of the stuff, especially local stuff. And, it's amazing because my wife reads it all. And she'll come in and she gets upset because people are constantly attacking me, especially on my local one. And the funny thing about the local one is all I do is share posts that either news agencies or other people or other Facebook pages put out that impact us locally in the area. I have a very strong one in Venice, which is about 24,000 fans. But combined in Sarasota County, I have over 40,000, close to 50,000 if you look at all my groups and pages. And so I put out the information there. For some reason, and the only thing I can think is it's utter jealousy. People just come out and attack me. And it's fine if you're going to attack me for my political views. I get that. And it's not really, you don't really have to attack. You can debate the issue. That's fine. I get that. But these people are out there attacking me, and they don't even, and it's not over political issues. It's just attacking me, calling me a pompous ass and this and that, and I'm self-absorbed. And I can tell you, I probably am self-absorbed. But it's amazing how much they go on the attack on me. I think the latest one is that I'm a pompous ass. I don't do anything for the community anymore. And this all evolved because there was a lady that was on there, and she helps the community. But I'm finding out through that program she doesn't really help like she puts out that she does. And then what happened is she put on there that she needed money for her cable bill that she hasn't paid in 9 months. And we're like, wait a second. Why the heck are you advertising this on here? And people are like, oh, let me help you. And to me, a cable bill isn't necessary. You don't need that in life. There's people out there that can't even put food on the table. Last Christmas, my wife helped a bunch of families through this site, and we found out that there were many people that didn't have clothes, they didn't have food, they weren't going to have a good Christmas. To me, that's more important, and that's where the real money should be given, not to someone because they're a bit lazy and can't pay their expensive bill. And to top it off, this lady goes out and spends either the day before or after that, and she posted on a thread, and somebody that went with her told us that she spent $40 eating at a meal out at a restaurant after asking for $500 to pay her cable bill. So I got rid of her, and everybody threw an uproar. They got upset and said I wasn't helping the community anymore. You know what? And I was like, whatever. I didn't put this out there to help the community. I put it out there to help me bring everything to one area. If you want to see me as anti-community, that's fine. I really don't care anymore. And those sites I'm actually thinking about just closing down because it's amazing how much I get attacked for doing absolutely nothing. And yet, on these political shows like this one, I rarely get attacked, which is amazing. So I thought, what I'm doing now is we're looking at, I tape this at 9 because I can't do it live anymore because it just kills my bandwidth and it comes out crappy. So now I'm looking at some of the headlines that I can't cover, and which generally I'll cover the next day. And, there's a few out there. And one is just this, they got the Australian government. Alex Jones put out a few things about climate warming, how the Weather Channel co-founders coming out and saying that the efforts have failed and people aren't buying into it anymore. And I'm sort of tossed on this. I don't know if there's global warming. I see issues where people say, hey, this iceberg's melting, this is happening, and I'm sort of tossed because you're getting stories from everybody. I don't know what the truth is out there. I've looked at both versions, and I'm trying to come up with a conclusion, and it's difficult because so much misinformation is being fed out there. The Canadian terror wave, and now people are saying, hey, now do you believe this about these lone ISIS players? Now are you on the same page as us? And, it was funny. I was watching Fox News, and they came out. I was in the gym this morning doing cardio, and they came out and said that, that the United States put up and said, God, what was the word? Instead of saying we're raising the terror alert, they said they're raising God, it started with a P. But essentially, they've taken the word terror out of there. Forget the fact that this guy was praising Allah yesterday after he killed one Canadian soldier and then went into the parliament to try to kill others. Forget the fact that this guy that ran over the soldier in Canada a few days ago praised Allah afterwards. They all had ties to extremist mosque. They both couldn't had their passports taken away because they tried traveling to support ISIS. Yet they refused to call them extremists. They refused to call them Islamic terrorists, which they are. And I just don't get that. Another thing that's out there is Mike Snyder. He said low inflation, the price of ground beef has risen 17% over the past year, which is an excellent headline. And I tell you what, it couldn't be further from the truth. If you watch this show, I argue it all the time. The common folk are getting hurt. We are getting hurt because there is inflation, folks. There is inflation out there. And it's utterly ridiculous that the government thinks they can come out and say there isn't inflation and we are all going to buy into it. I shop. My grocery bills have skyrocketed. And, and a lot of people don't realize what they do with inflation is they cherry pick their numbers. They'll go out there and let's say there's 50 numbers to choose from and they have to choose 20 numbers. They'll take the 20 that haven't really seen price increases like filet mignon. You're not going to see a price increase like that because it's already at the ceiling high up there. And they'll use those to come up with their inflation number of 1.5 or something like that. Where in reality, if you're out there buying, you're probably seeing inflation more around the 7-8% mark. But the government thinks, hey, if we tell you it's 1.5, you're going to believe it, and you're going to believe us because you're cheap. You're buying everything we say. Just like they're telling us unemployment's 5.5% or whatever that number is today. That doesn't include the people that have stopped looking for jobs. Now, I'm boots on the ground. I have through my local media pages. I know unemployment's higher. I know that people that are getting jobs are not getting high-paying jobs. They're getting minimum wage or a couple bucks over. They're not getting benefits. And it's a different story out there than what's being pushed by major media and the Obama administration. You go over to the Daily Beast. The Daily Beast, they're talking about the bust on the biggest sperm count myths. Obviously, the Canadian Terror Network and how we have to watch out for these lone sheeps that are out there now. There's a story out there about a 6-year-old that beat Ebola. And it looks like I've heard that they're taking Fam's dog off quarantine, which is a good thing. That's the Daily Beast. Breitbart talks about how the Democrats are fed up with Obama's inept, embarrassing White House. And we know that because they're shying away from them on the campaign trail. Yesterday, if you were watching this, you know I talked about the Democrats wiping their hands of Obama and saying, we're done with you. We're done with you guys. You didn't call Obama out, so if you lose, it's because you decided to turn your back on Obama. And this guy plays the blame game so well. The American, they covered about voter fraud. You probably heard about it where this guy comes in and stuffs a ton of votes into the ballot box, and they're essentially his votes that he was casting. And they discuss the lax election laws that are out there. Talk about, which state was this? Where the governor of some state, I can't recall the state offhand, but he went in, he pushed to vote for himself as a Republican, but somehow registered as a Democrat. They said it was a glitch with the system, with the terminal he was using. They pulled it. But it has to question you. If this could happen there, how many other glitches are out there? And how are these machines being put out with these glitches? These are good questions, solid questions that need to be asked and need to be resolved. Who will control the internet? If we give up the internet control that we have right now, the last bastion of it, who will control it and what kind of restrictions will be put on it? You know, if the countries like Russia, China, many countries out there, they're going to do what they can to silence and essentially tie our hands up so that we can't get out there and communicate stuff, like in Turkey where they have it, Iran. They silence a lot of the information that's being able to be put out there that's anti-government, anti their agenda. The other thing that's going to be a huge newsbreaker probably today, probably this weekend, with how it generally works, evidence. Evidence is leading credence to the police officer's version of what happened at Ferguson, that Michael Brown did indeed have, the way the forensics are there, that he was up close, that the way he had gun residue on his hand, he had to be reaching for the gun. They say that there are some black witnesses out there that are agreeing with what Mike Wilson, or what's his name, Wilson, the officer Wilson, was stating happened, yet they're afraid to come forward because the community will ostracize them. And then there's also the calls about the UN with the water issue in Detroit, where people can't afford their bills, so their water's being cut off, and the UN is getting mixed in there, which you guys know my feelings on the UN. We're going to talk a little bit about the Pentagon. They spent $424 million so far, dropping weapons to rebels, to Kurds, to fight the ISIS campaign out there, and a ton of them have ended up in ISIS's hands. And I think I actually have a video we're going to show you on that. You have in Rome, this lady came on, and there was a Ghana woman. She was attacked because they said, I have Ebola. Yeah, in Rome. So a lot of people are really Ebola crazy out there, you could say. North Korea, they're barring foreign tourists because of the Ebola scare out there. So you have a lot of concerns still out there with Ebola, although it does seem like we have it in check here. The United States has said that for people that are coming in from those three countries, we're checking them. They got to fly into 5 airports. Also, they're going to monitor them. I'm not sure how they're going to monitor them for 21 days to ensure they're okay, and try to trace that whole tracing thing that I was discussing yesterday. Lastly, and this is something I haven't been able to pull up. I was doing the ski machine, I think it was today, and I was watching Fox News, and they had a guy come on. He's a VA whistleblower. So this is a guy. He testified before Congress. He's filed under the whistleblower protection. Somehow the White House took that information and gave it to his manager, who decided to discipline him, which is illegal. And nobody's speaking up to say why that was done. This guy's come out and he said something that impacts me. 3 years ago, maybe more, maybe 4 years ago, I filed for health benefits through the VA as a veteran of the United States Navy. And I received a letter back that said, here's your file number. I haven't heard anything. I've tried to contact them a few times. I lost the file number. Nothing. No joy. Nothing happening. Well, lo and behold, what's happened is, and this guy's out of the Atlanta office, and I don't know if this is a national number or a Georgia number, but he came out and he's stating that 371,000 applicants for VA benefits were put in a pending file and never acted upon. He claims that I think it was 47,000 veterans have died because they were unable to get in and get the treatment necessary. He also states that nothing is being done. We haven't heard anything, and the assumption has been that the VA is correcting the issue. He says that nothing's being done about it, that they still operate under the previous procedures that brought in all these issues. He's saying he's being disciplined. He was on an interview, I think it was yesterday or a couple days ago, with Neil Cavuto. 8 minutes after appearing on there, they summoned him to an administrative meeting and said you can no longer talk to any press, which again is against the whistleblower laws that are out there. So the VA saga continues. I'm going to be looking into it more because I'm a vet and I want my brothers in arms to be taken care of. And so I have tremendous issues with what's happening there. So let's go ahead. We're going to cut to a commercial. On these commercials, I think I've made like $5 off of them. It's more of me, helping my sponsor out, my weekend sponsor, Phil's Gang. So I play their spot. And then I play some other spots and see if I can get any traction on them. But what they primarily do is give me time to set up without having dead ear and you guys watching me. So we'll be back right after this short message from my sponsor, philsgang.com.
Is your money manager giving you safety and security? Wouldn't you like to make your money work harder for you? Then you should consider joining philsgang.com, where thousands of individual investors have successfully profited.
This year I'm up 60% on my portfolio. Following your system has been fantastic. I've been with you for about a month and a half now, and I'm already up 7%.
I've been in the business for a long time, and you're really one of the best I've ever heard.
Well, I just want to let you know what a great teacher you are.
For over a decade, philsgang.com's Phil Grandy and Donald Cogswell have been teaching, coaching, and investing right along with all Phil's Gang members.
I want to thank Donnie for Market Wrap. I bought 2,500 shares of AUI and sold it this morning at $820 profit.
Why not join thousands of satisfied Phil's Gang customers today? Go to philsgang.com, philsgang.com, or call 877-600-4264. That's 877-600-4264. Call today.
Okay, folks, we're back, and I'm going to try going to this video. What I noticed happened, though, when I was trying to set it up is I put the wrong link down for the video. So we're going to give this a try. Let me see which one's better. I think we're going to go with Lamb McAdoo because the other one's mainly in Arabic where they're showing basically ISIS put out a video showing, hey, look, we got your weapons. You dropped them to us. So let's get you set up here for this one.
Welcome to the InfoWars Nightly News. It is Tuesday, October 21st, 2014, and I'm Leanne McAdoo. Here's what's coming up tonight.
Tonight, did the U.S. drop weapons in ISIS-controlled territory? Then, the Ebola czar believes there are too many people in Africa. And Alex Jones reveals McDonald's super-sized secrets. That's next on the InfoWars Nightly News.
Could you please stop saying literally every 2 seconds?
Literally.
The military announced that it dropped weapons, supplies, and ammunition yesterday to Kurdish forces. They're holding down the Syrian city of Kobani. They are fighting against Islamic State militants. Now, U.S. Central Command said that they were intended to enable continued resistance to Islamic State efforts to take full control of Kobani. The airdrops were made even though it's certain to anger the Turkish government, who views the Kurdish rebels as an extension of the PKK, which is a group which has waged a 30-year insurgency in Turkey and is designated a terror group by the U.S. and by NATO. So I wonder what the government there is going to be thinking now that not only are they dealing with a better armed PKK, but oopsie, some of those weapons also happen to fall into the hands of ISIS militants. Again. Now, this is in a new video that was released from an ISIS-associated YouTube account. Weapons and munitions dropped by American planes and landed in the areas controlled by the Islamic State in Kobani. It's about a 1.5-minute video. They're basically saying, thank you, USA, thank you, Team USA, for the updated supplies. Obviously, these are going to be older weapons than what we use here in our military. But of course, this is just another round of U.S. weapons and ammunition and supplies that have fallen into the hands of the Islamic State. Oh, but don't worry about it. We're just arming the moderate rebels, right? The moderate rebels. So this is just another round of U.S. weapons that have fallen into the hands of ISIS, whether taken by force or from a package that literally fell from heaven. But let's not worry, because the U.S. says they're just arming the moderate rebels. But it seems that the U.S. is making quite a habit of this, arming their enemies abroad while trying to disarm their enemies here in America.
DNA Force. When cells become toxic.
That's an interesting perspective that she put on it. They are arming these rebel forces that they consider moderates, which are on the terror list, PKK, and trying to disarm us through trying to take away our Second Amendment rights. Trying to put in these extraordinary restrictions, these extraordinary hurdles, blocks to us maintaining our weapons, considering veterans as domestic terrorists. So, now here's the issue with this whole PKK. It's interesting. When we were in Iraq, and I was listening to a documentary yesterday, I think, and the guy said, look, the PKK, when we were in Iraq, not one soldier was killed from the PKK. He said that he thinks one pilot died when he ejected over there, and that's it. PKK is more of an issue with the Turkish government and the Iraqi government, because the PKK consists of Kurds, and the Kurds, what the Iraq government and the Turkey government does not want is a separatist state for the Kurds, and they don't want these arms in their control. So what do? Essentially, the ISIS group is running around with our vehicles, our weapons, sophisticated vehicles. The Kurds are out there trying to fight them off using pickup trucks and the small arms they have. Small arms in comparison to what ISIS now has, which now includes warplanes. Syria shot down a warplane yesterday that was being flown by an ISIS rebel. So what do? Do you arm the PKK? If you do, you run the risk of upsetting Turkey. You run the risk of upsetting Iraq. But do we really care if we upset Iraq? Turkey's a little different story. But now ISIS has in its possession tons of more armament. And they're not only from the retreating Iraqi force, but from us airdropping it into their area. They have long-range artillery, thousands of automatic weapons, all at the courtesy of the United States and the inept and corrupt Iraqi military. And it's a shame that this is happening this way. And again, it comes down to, do we need boots on the ground? Is our ultimate objective in Syria to be able to put boots on the ground to fight this ISIS war that we created? We funded them, we trained them, we wanted them in Syria to overthrow Assad. Now we have to go in and fight them, but we still are arch enemies with Syria. We will not talk to them. The United States wants Assad out. And, that's what Iran believes. Now, Iran, it's strange how this is going. Iran and Russia basically support Assad, the Syrian government. They're arch enemies with ISIS. ISIS was sponsored and supported by us. Now we are working hand in hand with Iran, because Iran's got soldiers in Iraq. You don't see it reported too often. I think they sent 2,000 soldiers in there, and they're fighting ISIS there. Iran's biggest concern from their chief of staff is that he believes the Kurds of Kobani will be sacrificed as part of a conspiracy to put boots on the ground in Syria, U.S. boots. And they're accusing us, the United States, of engaging in selective and token airstrikes in Kobani. And he states that the strikes have contributed to the advance of IS in Syria, that they have not stopped ISIS, and they've been benefiting from it in their march to take the Assad government. So they're saying that so far the U.S. air campaign played up a heroic gesture in the cooperation with the media, but it has not obtained its objectives. Some heavy accusations there coming out of Iran. Accuracy of them, I'm not so sure. U.S. and Russia they can't come to terms on how to fight this ISIS threat. Again, because Russia is on the side of the Assad government. And you have Secretary of State John Kerry over there, and he's saying, hey, look, we've talked to Russia. I've talked to their military leadership, foreign minister, and they insist strongly that they are on our side and that we're going to work together to fight ISIS. Russia's saying, no, that's not happening. We never came to that agreement. What are you talking about, John Kerry? But what supposedly John Kerry is saying, hey, look, the foreign minister agreed to this. They agreed to some type of strategy in fighting ISIS and working with the United States on it. They went back to Russia, and Russia said, no, it's not happening, and they're reneging on it. I got to tell you, if I was Russia, I wouldn't be too excited to help fight on ISIS. Here's the issue. A, you've got sanctions all over our butt. Why do I want to help you when you're putting sanctions all over us that are crippling our economy? Why do I want to help you, United States, when you're in there causing all this trouble in the Ukraine? You're the one that brought all these issues on in the Ukraine. You're the one, U.S., that's out there demonizing the Russian bear. We are friends with Assad. U.S., you're in there trying to take over that country. Nation building. So there's a lot of reasons why Russia does not want to inject themselves into the fight with ISIS. Do they want ISIS in their own area? No, they're already dealing with Chechen terrorists and other forms. They don't want ISIS there too. So I got to tell you, from a guy standing on the outside, I wouldn't want to go in there and help either if I was Russia. We'll be right back. Get some of this great apparel from theroguegrant.com or the Uncensored Report or the VeniceScoop.com. We have hats, shirts, coffee mugs. They say educate, inspire, and change. Or for my Scoop fans, it'll say the Venice Scoop, Sarasota Scoop, etc. Help me with this operation so I can continue to get a fresh perspective on the news out to the masses. Thanks a lot and have a great day. Just go to my website and click on the icon. 1-800-PET-MEDS. Yes, get your pet essentials, your medicines, your collars, everything you need online. And guess what? You'll be supporting the operations of this great station, the Uncensored Report. So go to my website, click on the icon for 1-800-PET-MEDS, and help us continue the information war that's going on out there. All right, folks, we're back, and now we're going to talk about the hollow justice that's out there in our courts and the age of government-sanctioned tyranny that we're seeing from John Whitehead out there at InfoWars. And basically, he came out and talked about the justice in America, and it makes less sense with each passing day. He brought up a couple examples, like a Michigan couple that's been raising chickens in their backyard. And they did this as a source for healthy food. And you're seeing this a lot of days. People want chickens in their backyard. They'll get their eggs. They're out there growing their own vegetables, common gardens that are out there. And now this family could get up to 90 days because they had backyard hens. And you see it here, too, locally. Where they're fighting to be able to get hens, and the cities are saying, nope, we can't do it. We're not going to zone it for it. They're essentially saying that they're too loud and it'll be a public nuisance. That's their story. He brought up another issue where you had a 53-year-old Virginia man, and he's facing 20 years in jail for kidnapping, despite the fact that key evidence shows that he was innocent and that his accuser was lying. Yet the courts refuse to hear the case on Jones versus the U.S., and they say that they can now punish individuals for crimes of which they may never have been convicted of or charged. So, what we're seeing is with every ruling that's being handed down, it's becoming more apparent that we live in an age of hollow justice, with government courts largely lacking in vision and scope. And they're rendering these narrow rulings that are focused on the letter of the law. And this is true at all levels of the judiciary, from your courts in your cities to the highest court, the Supreme Court, which is seemingly more concerned with establishing order and protecting government agents. And we should be concerned about this, folks, especially given the turbulence of the age. Police overreach, military training drills, SWAT team raids, asset forfeiture. There's a big one there. If you get pulled over and you have $3,000, they can take that money and assume you're a drug smuggler, because you should not have cash in your hands, especially that much. And I got to tell you, $3,000 is not that much. They want you to put it into the banks because they're working with the banksters out there. Who the heck wants to trust their money with the banks or the government? What does our current Supreme Court usually do when it comes to controversial issues where they have an opportunity to weigh in on the issues? They duck. They run for cover. They remain silent. And it gives the government and their corporate sponsors the benefit of doubt. And rarely does it help the populace. Rarely does the populace prevail. Every so often you'll get a bone that's tossed to you to show their allegiance to the Constitution, but you don't really see that. And they go on to talk about this Justice Douglas and how we haven't really seen anything since then. And that one of the biggest differences that Justice Douglas between Douglas and his contemporaries is that those who occupy the bench today can be found in his answer to a government that refuses to listen to citizens or abide by the rule of law out there. So that was an interesting article out there by that individual author. Turmoil. I've been talking about this for a while. The market turmoil ahead of us, the fear index. The VAX, and how it's showing that is it a calm before the storm. I think Paul Joseph put this out there, but I think I've talked about this. I know I've talked about it several times. I think I touched on the VIX issue last week. And the whole VIX index, and what it is it's a measure of how volatile the S&P 500 is likely to be over the next 30 days. If you talk to a lot of people like Phil Grandy at philsgang.com, he's live at 9 and 3 o'clock Monday through Friday. He'll tell you that the S&P is essentially what you want to look at when you want to see the direction that the market's going to go in. Not really the Dow 30 or the NASDAQ, because there's so small amount of shares. The VIX is commonly known as the fear index out there, the fear gauge, because it's used to predict the short-term market expectations that are out there. Now, over the last 3 days, you've seen the VIX drop 12.74%, 15.5%. 5% and 13.4%. And it's never dropped more than 10% for 3 days in a row ever. So it's got a lot of people that are concerned, like the zero hedge. Last week, VIX spiked to the highest levels in almost 3 years off the back of concerns about collapsing oil prices. People are concerned it's dropped from 100 down to what, 81, 82 that it's at now? You have the Ebola virus. You have the weak, anemic economic growth. You have Europe's ills with the economy. Could the unprecedented drop in the VIX index over the last 3 years represent a calm before the storm? That's what a lot of people are asking, especially on Grandy's show, Phil's gang. They're out there constantly. They suspect that there's going to be a huge drop-off, and they saw that drop-off, and they told everyone, don't go back into the markets and buy during this upswing. And it's such a volatile market. You know, you had it up 2 days ago at, I think, in the 200 range. Yesterday it was down, I think, 145. Where will it be today? The Dow Jones suffered a drop of 450 points, which is its biggest loss in over a year, following weeks of turbulent action. Standard & Poor's dropped 31 points. And like I said, they rebounded, but a lot of people are concerned that there's going to be a major crash. What's going to trigger it? What's the black swan event going to be? The surprise incident. What's going to make these stocks plummet? Because something's not right, according to the VIX. Now, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back. We're going to talk about Ebola. The Ebola czar. No medical experience. And he believes in depopulation. Interesting. We'll be right back. Hey, everybody. Have you thought about fluoride? How it's dumbing us down? Why don't you give Fluoride Shield a try? Or how about Survival Shield to help you get the iodine that's been taken out of our salts? Give both of these products a try. Just go to theroguerat.com or the uncensoredreport.com. Click on my shop area and click on the InfoWars icon. It'll give credit to the operation and help us continue to get the message out there. Have a great day. And that stuff's good. I take it all the time. Fluoride Shield to fight off the harmful effects of fluoride. We could go into many examples of that. I put it up on my Educate, Inspire, and Change page constantly. And on my website, theuncensoredreport.com. Also, we could go, what else do I take there? The iodine, no longer in salt. So I take the iodine. My IQ's probably dropped. It's probably increased significantly since then. I can feel it. I feel alive. Whew. All right. Ebola. That's what we're here to talk about, folks. Ebola and the new Ebola czar. And I touched on this guy a lot yesterday. But his whole overpopulation thing is a concern, which I did not really know about yesterday. In addition to having essentially no medical qualifications whatsoever, no showing for a couple of the first two meetings, we got this guy in there. And he put out this video, which is surfaced of him declaring that growing population of, particularly in Africa, was a top leadership challenge. He's for the depopulation, just like your young Bill Gates. But insiders suggest that Obama has even bigger plans for Clan. After he takes care of this whole Ebola scare, which is advancing tyranny, he's got big moves for him. But he holds this sordid view about population, and he's not alone in it. He joins a cadre of discredited overpopulation zealots that are out there. And there's a ton, especially worried about Africa. The latest revelation also came shortly after the anti-population growth fanatics of the United Nations, already under fire for preparations, forced abortions in communist China. There's population control there. Communist China, the one-child campaign. Let's use it. And how about unveiled sweeping and widely criticized plans to reduce population in Africa? They unveiled that at the UN. The new Ebola czar, his former boss is Biden. Biden stoked controversy on related issues in the past, in 2011. He said he fully understood and accepts and gets the whole China regime's brutal one-child policy. Forget the fact that it's barbarically enforced out there. with these coerced abortions and doing it through grotesque means. He said, hey, I'm not second guessing it. Instead, they're showering China with taxpayer funds. They're showering places like Planned Parenthood with taxpayer funds. The UN Population Fund, both of which have been implicated by the Commission for Forced Abortions in China. Al Gore, another one of his former bosses, he declared fertility management as crucial in stopping the alleged global warming. So Klein fits in perfectly with the overpopulation zealots that are in the Obama administration, that are friends of Obama. And like I said, it's not nothing new. It's part of the New World Order. Part of the New World Order. So we should be concerned not only over this overpopulation commentary, the fact the guy has no medical experience. He's not a professor of anything. He hasn't written books on Ebola. He knows nothing about Ebola. He's in the political crony placed in there by Obama because Obama says, hey, he's one hell of a manager. Now, although things haven't gone well with Ebola in the beginning, and Obama significantly dropped the ball, CDC significantly dropped it, does seem to be weighing off some. You know, the 43 people who had direct or indirect contact with Duncan, they've been taken off of the Ebola watch. We haven't really seen anything else. They've pulled off a couple people from flights now that they're being routed to 5 airports that had high temperatures. Now they're putting stuff into place because the population have risen up. The Americans are saying, look, you're an idiot, Obama. You're an idiot, CDC Friedman. What are you doing to us? Why are you not taking action? But there should even be more stuff done out there. For example, sending 4,000 of our soldiers over to Liberia, Ghana, and everywhere without suits, without hazmat suits, with 4 hours of training. So we got to keep the pressure up on these folks. What we're hearing about the 21-day quarantine, where that's fine for about 85-90% of them, but there is a small percentage, 3%, that can go 42%. How about it being in the sperm for up to 71 days? So we continue to have issues, and it's fine that Obama, the CDC, are finally acting on some of our concerns, but we need much more, folks. As the Ebola virus story disappears from the national headlines, it's safe to assume that mainstream media will not move to cover the relevant issues out here. They're going to go to other topics, just like they did before. If you know this program, if you watch this program, you know I've been on it since the beginning. Back in, I think it was February, March. Major media came in around 100 deaths. You heard some rumblings. 1,000 deaths, you heard a lot more rumblings. Now we're up over 4,500. You hear more rumblings because somebody contracted it here in the United States. But it's starting to die off. They're going to the next news story, and I get that. I remember yesterday I was sitting in the TV room watching major media, and my wife said, "I'm so sick of hearing about Ebola." And I gotta think, is that what most Americans are thinking? I didn't say anything to her, but it clicked with me. I'm like, is that what most Americans are thinking? Is that what major media and the government is thinking? Is that what the government was hoping? That people would say, I'm sick of hearing about this. They'd stop the conversation while the issue remains out there. It's like D68. You don't hear anything about D68 anymore, but it's still out there. It's still prevalent. You don't hear about the illegals flooding across the border anymore, but it's still out there. It's still prevalent. And it's up to us, alternative media, to keep it out there in the mind of the public. We can't let it just stop. Ferguson, we talked about that, how the autopsy came out, and it sounds like Darren Wilson was at close range with Michael Brown, that there was a significant altercation. Brown was within inches of Wilson when he was shot, according to the microscopic examination of the tissue of the thumb wound revealed that foreign matter that's consistent with products that are discharged from the barrel of a firearm were present. And this led the forensic team to believe in their autopsy that Brown was going for the gun. It's consistent with the autopsy of the family. It's consistent with the autopsy of the local forensic guy there and the federal. It's consistent with what many witnesses said, including African Americans that were on the scene there. Who knows what will happen? Will protests erupt? Will there still be concerns out there? Will Brown's and family's inflammatory language they put out yesterday bring about more concerns with the issues? Will media continue to cover it? And that brings up a whole other thing about media, the U.S. news media, what they're putting out, what you want to know. Do you trust them? Do you believe the information they're putting out? Is it accurate? Not just U.S. too. I watch Italian news every night. You do get a totally different perspective from them than what you're hearing in the United States. But you got to wonder too, are they being accurate? Are they telling you everything? And I don't think they are. Especially with Ebola. You don't see a lot of the communications there. And so the question that comes out is, do you trust news media? Do you believe the information they're going to give you is true and accurate? Now, on my side, I go through all different variables. I try to cover everything, and I don't expect you to believe what I'm putting out. What I expect you to do is to educate yourself. Take the information I'm giving you. Go to other resources. Inspire you to go out there and look for other resources. And then see that what I'm saying is not a lie. And it'll affect some change out there so that you'll go out. You'll communicate the message. You know, on average, Americans watch approximately 153 hours of TV a month. But the news, they are increasingly turning to alternative sources such as mine. The CNNs, the MSNBCs, the Fox News, they're losing hordes of viewers that are desperately seeking for answers that they're not getting from major media, the mainstream media, because it's slowly dying. They'll never admit it, but they're slowly dying. People are turning to other sources of information. And trust with the U.S. major media is at an all-time low, according to the Gallup surveys that are out there. One of the issues is they're far more liberal. Even the conservative biased Fox News can be a bit liberal, especially on social issues. So they're not as nearly conservative as you think. Even though they're promoted constantly as having a Republican agenda, which they do have sometimes. But that does not mean it is conservative. Especially, like I said, with social issues. Did you know that one of the top executives with Fox News is a Hillary Clinton supporter? Huge Hillary Clinton supporter. He's given her as much as $3 million since 1992. Doesn't sound too conservative there for their leadership. MSNBC, they're in a death spiral. Those people lie to everybody. They're the worst. Obviously extremely liberal. Not sure what happened there. So Americans are turning to Facebook, other internet sources, the uncensoredreport.com, to get their news. And the big viewers, the big cable network news shows are starting to see this. What's going to happen, folks, when you take internet shows like mine on YouTube and the internet TV becomes more prevalent? People are going to have even more access to shows like mine, and that's what I'm betting on. That's why I do a lot of video. I do news shows like this because I know internet TV in 3 to 5 years is going to be around the corner. In 3 to 5 years, I think I'll have the audience base that will give me the base to get out there and promote my thoughts, my theories, my agenda, which is to tell people to wake up. Smell the coffee, as I always say. You know, even though they're dying, though, major media is still in a dominant position. They own six major media conglomerates own 90% of all media that is consumed in America. They control almost everything you watch, hear, and read. Media outlets put out what their bosses want them to dictate. Do you think CNBC is going to tell you, oh, no, the market's crashing. Oh, no, this is the issue. No, it would not benefit their executives. You know, and we're not just talking about news media, folks. We're talking about papers, magazines, publishing houses, video game makers, music labels, websites. And the more they can control that, the more they can control the message. Same happened with me. I've talked. We've communicated with a source that wants to carry my news show. They said, but you know, if we do this, one of the options is you got to, if we do it, you know, you basically, one of the options was you become an employee, we buy your show, we work it up this way. But they want to be able to control the message I'm putting out. And they said that to me. You know, you're not going to have, in terms of what you put out, we're going to give you certain guidelines, and we're going to control the message. And I don't know if I want that. I don't know if I want people dictating what I can and can't communicate. They're my thoughts. It's my show. It's the Uncensored Report, the Francesco Abbruzzino show. Do I want people to dictate what I can and cannot communicate out there to the general public? My message. My communication. I don't think so. We're going to end it there, folks. That's been the show for the day. Hopefully you found it enlightening. Hopefully I've educated you. Hopefully I've inspired you to get out there and affect some change in your neighborhood. Start at the local level. We got the elections coming up soon. Local, state, national elections. Hopefully, we're getting a message out there and you can go out and affect the change. We're inspiring you, educating you to get out there and affect the change. Because that's what's needed, folks. That's what's needed. All right, this has been Frankie, and we will see you tomorrow at 11 a.m. sharp. Everybody have a great day.